Hello, hello.
Episode number 3.
Exactly,
Today.
third episode already. We're getting a routine here.
Yes, it's almost the end of the year, Nina. What do we do?
Strike the almost. It is definitely the end of the year. We're there.
Party?
Let's start with kicking back and taking some time.
Man, the year flew by so quickly.
It's because we had so much fun.
Oh, yeah.
When you have fun, time flies.
Much faster than when we were at Google, I have to say.
Sometimes we had fun there as well, no? But it's true. But I think it's also because there were so many different things that we had to do and learn to do first.
True. Yeah, like accounting and how to open up a business and all kinds of other boring stuff. Very fun.
So boring. I found it overwhelming at times. I would have wished for boring.
All right, what do we discuss today?
Aside from the question of, will this new fancy recording equipment that we have crash my machine again?
Yeah, for our listeners, we struggled for over a week to record the session because all our equipment broke and tools didn't work and stuff. But now we hope we managed to beat all the technology ghosts.
Yeah. Keeping fingers crossed. And we're doing this so that the audio is better because we got feedback that it was abysmal and not really.
It was really bad last time.
Up to standard. So let's hope everything works and the audio is better. While we discuss the question, what do we actually prioritize as UXers and in particular as UX researchers? Do we prioritize speedy action, speedy results, or do we prioritize rigor and getting super confident data back from our research?
Research rigor. I love rigor. I remember when I was in academia, doing that research and then reporting and everything perfect in the paper, all the numbers and the stats and how we did it and how we secured validity and all these things. I'm kind of a geek with these kind of things.
And you are bringing up a really important thing here, kind of like the setup, the environment that you're moving in, right? In academia, rigor brings you to the goal that you have with doing research.
Yeah, I mean, it's what you're being trained to do, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's obviously not everyone that works as a researcher has the same background, so I want to acknowledge different backgrounds might have different trainings, but in general, in academia as a researcher, you get trained on how to do research properly in the most rigorous way. So you can analyze, report it, publish it. It's generalizable. Others can use it, can build upon that work, right? And if you think about the entire process and how it works when you work in academia, right? Like how you do the work, when you report your work, right? When you write a summary and then like a literature review, kind of like state of the art, this is what we know. Then you go into like what you plan, what you did, like the methods, right? The goals from the research goals. And then you move into the data that you got back, right? But you report the data without any interpretation. Then in the discussion, you interpret the data, you explain what this could mean, and then you publish it, right? And the publishing process takes years sometimes. And once it's published, your goal is that your work gets cited by other researchers. So that takes another year. So we're talking here a time frame of a couple of years until actually have some success metrics to show for your work beyond the pure publication. So as a researcher, you get trained that doing the work and getting it out there is your main goal, and then being cited by other researchers, obviously, in connection with that. And that shapes our thinking, right? As researchers, when you get trained that way, right, then and you do, that's how you do your first research, like as your first research project as a student, as a psychology student, right? You do in third semester. So you do something and you already get trained in that kind of thinking, reporting, structuring. And then as you move on, bachelor, master, maybe even PhD, that's what you do, right?
But then some of us change into the industry. A lot of us actually listening to this
right?
It's are in the industry, right?
95% easily.
But we hold on to that standard that we apply for ourselves and for our research.
At least in the beginning, right? I mean, I think that's one of the main things researchers need to learn when they transition into industry is how to use their methods, but with a completely different goal and with a completely different structure on how to approach things, right? If you think, I always explain that to researchers when they moved into Google from academia. I always explained it as like, you basically flip around the entire report. When you write a report for your team, you do not start with like, here's the summary, like here's everything we know, right? And here's the methods, right? Like, and you could see that like people who just joined their first report would often be that way, right? So the first 20 slides would be the methods and right, and then all the data, and then at the end in slide 80 you have the insights, right? And nobody ever goes to slide 80, right?
Well, some researchers might, but not your cross-functional stakeholders, not the people who actually need to action on your insights. Yeah.
And so you kind of flip that, right? You say like, well, actually you have to start with the key 3 insights, right? It's like in the most extreme case, it's like, here's the 3 things we learned. Or maybe you start with a research question, like here's what we're actually trying to look at. And we did a bunch of stuff on one slide. Like I always said, like for a method, you have one slide, right? We looked at so many users using this method, this kind of profile, right? And then you move into like, these are the insights, and it's not all the insights. It's the top 3. Maybe you have a bunch more afterwards for the more interested, right? But basically everything that we're trained to report as academic researchers is in the appendix, if at all, and might be looked at by another researcher.
And I think that's a really important thing. Like people need to learn new ways of doing things, right? But when I'm working with especially researchers again, but I have that also with designers who kind of like hold themselves to unrealistic standards, so to kind of like standards that don't apply in the setting that they are operating in. When I work with them, it's oftentimes not so much that they don't know how to do that, it's that they struggle with giving themselves permission to even do it. It feels like it's the wrong thing. They feel like they're cutting corners, they are not doing proper research. They feel like
it's kind of dirty.
Right? It's dirty, exactly. Like that's kind of like the sense that they have. Yeah. It's more around this kind of like giving yourself permission, or not just permission, but like actually understanding that you're holding yourself to a standard that doesn't make sense in the environment that you're working in, that your job is different from an academic's job, right? Like your purpose, your value are very, very different from the purpose and the value that you have as an academic researcher.
I think that is the first point that you can basically start with, which is like, what is your job? As an academic researcher, your job is to increase the knowledge of the world, right? And if, as a PhD, when you receive your PhD, you swear, right? Like there's an official ceremony I had to do, like where you swear, where they tell you what you need to swear, which basically that you will always try to find the truth, that you will do everything you can to protect it, right? And that you will basically try to move forward humanity that way. As a researcher in industry, that is not your goal, right? And you're not employed to do that, right? And I like to cite here a fellow Googler, like somebody who worked with us, Google, Seth. Seth gives talks about like research and research impact, really good ones. And he says there in the beginning, he says, your job is not to generate insights, right? Because he asked in the beginning, what is your job? And people go like, well, I'm just generate insights, user knowledge, right? And I was like, no, it's not your job. Your job is to ship products, right? And I think that encapsulates everything that makes this difference, right? From academia into industry, which is you are employed within a product development team to increase the knowledge of users, to help the team take better decisions, not perfect decisions, better decisions, right? For users, for the product, for the business, right? You are not amassing the knowledge of the world. You're not trying to generate insights that are generalizables over decades by other researchers in other industries for other products, right? It's not your goal. Your goal is trying to help the company ship better products and to improve the business, right? And therefore, your previous way of thinking about research needs to change.
I like to say, like, hyperbolically speaking, your job as a researcher is to beat a coin flip. Like, without your research on the team, that's essentially what your team does, right? They take a decision without user information. Like, they do it based on their gut feeling or whatever. And it comes down to, like, they could flip a coin. It's like, do we go right or left? It doesn't matter. Like, you do that. If you let go of, like, your need to create truth, of creating insights at like 95% confidence, and you embrace kind of like this, if it's creating 60% confidence, it's better than a coin flip. And that's where you're adding value, making it a better decision than what it would have been without you. And I think that's the first step goal that we need to define for ourselves as researchers.
Yeah. It's important that our listeners don't misunderstand that. Right? We're not saying you should do garbage research, right? It's not that, right? You should obviously do the best possible research in the time and the budget and like basically the constraints that you have to increase the chance of the team taking a good decision, right? So I think it's a very good metaphor, the coin flip, right? If you can flip the odds in a positive direction, so users are more likely to get a good output, then that's a win, right? But if you take too long to generate that, the team will move on without that. They will flip the coin. And then you can come back with a research that is rigorous and it's valid and everything, but nothing will happen with it. And by definition, you're then not successful as a researcher, right? Because as a researcher, your job is to ship better products if you have not helped the team to develop a better product because you were too late, because you said, there's not enough time to do that. So the answer is no, right? Then you're kind of not successful.
I think there are 2 points there that are really important to me. Like, your job is also to be in the room, right? You're not somewhere off doing that amazing research that's going to stand the test of time for the next 5 years. And that's going to create amazing stuff that nobody's going to hear because you're not in the room at the same time. So first part is you need to be in the room and you need to kind of like work with your cross-functional stakeholders to ensure that they think about getting you into the room because they do not have this expectation of you being elsewhere doing research. And then the other point is like with regards to shitty research, right? I think shitty research is research that the audience does not understand correctly. So if I come with my 60% confidence, right, and I sell that as like the amazing thing that's going to be true for the next 5 years, that is shitty research. But my job as a researcher is to contextualize also what I'm doing, to make visible what trade-offs I'm having by choosing one method over another, by doing the quick and dirty, right? Like what the delta is to what we could do if we had more time, by kind of like allowing my very capable stakeholders, right? I think that's also a mistake that we often do. Like just because my PM, my engineer, they are not trained in statistics, they are not trained in methodology, they are not capable of like picking the right thing without my help. They're very much able to understand when I explain the trade-offs, what we're looking at and why one thing makes more sense than the other. And so I think we're oftentimes also really lazy about that piece by kind of like taking out their ability to understand why we're doing and what it means and taking a decision without involving them that this is better for them.
And for me, it's always amazing how well they are able to cope with those constraints. When you go like, well, there's all these downsides, right? Like there's all these compromises we did, right? There's obviously an insecurity with that decision because they have to do that anyway, right?
Exactly.
They have to take those insecure decisions where they don't know if it's the right decision all the time. So now it's kind of like, oh, all right, this helps me to be a little bit more sure that this is the right direction.
And it's funny, like we hear them doing those trade-offs all the time, right? Like we as UXers, we listen to our PMs, to our Eng, go, well, ideally we would be doing that, but we don't have time for that, or we don't have the resources for that, so we're going to go with that. And we all accept it. But for ourselves, we still have a problem with like standing in front of them and going, yeah, we do the same thing. Like we have an ideal version and we have kind of like a pragmatic version. And this is what the pragmatic version, what it costs you in terms of confidence or detail. But you can follow my reasoning.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Maybe to be a little bit less abstract here to our listeners, why don't we share some examples from trade-offs we did or compromises we did in our work at Google to I have one. Like, do you want to start or should I?
You start, and then I have time to think.
So one trade-off that we did is when I was in cloud. When I joined cloud, I got tasked to build a quant research team, and there were a couple of people already in the team. And my manager at that time came and said, I have a problem. Our CEO, which was Diane Green at that time, wants us to measure NPS for all products. And I went to the research team and said, we need to measure NPS for all products. Diane wants that. And the research team said, no, we're not doing this because NPS is a garbage metric.
I love the NPS discussion. Like it's a never ending.
I want to trigger people, NPS. And so my manager says that, and I'm like, yeah, they're right. NPS is a garbage metric. He's like, that's okay, Javier, right? But that doesn't help me. I have Diane who wants us to measure NPS for all products. And she said, if you're not doing it, someone will. And I was like, calm down, right? We will measure NPS for all products. Like, forget about that, right? So I went to the team and said, like, so what's the deal, right? And so they came with all their concerns about NPS that every researcher knows, and I'm not going to go into right now. And said, like, this is all true, but we have our CEO who wants something, and the CEO wants user data. The CEO wants to understand how our products are doing in front of the user's eyes, right? How valuable is that, right? We can have the CEO of cloud improve their user empathy through user research, right? And so while from a rigor perspective, we should not be using NPS, we will absolutely do that. We will build a program to measure NPS, and we will add other metrics that we think are more reasonable, like user satisfaction and what did we have, like usability, like I don't know, ease of use. We had a bunch of other metrics and many other things that we would measure at the same time. We would use NPS as a segue for us to give her what she wanted, but to also deliver other research and increase user understanding in their organization. And that's what we did. And this program ran for years and was super successful. It was maybe not an example in the sense of time constraints that you had before, but is still constrained in rigor because it's something actually like ideally you wouldn't be measuring NPS because it's not a good metric. But your job is to help the organization develop better products, to ship products, right? So if you have the opportunity to give customer sentiment metrics to all teams, right? And the price for that is that you also measure NPS because that's what the CEO wants. That's like an easy decision to me.
And like what you're describing there also, the important thing there is that you're also building social capital, right? Like you're doing something that they are asking for. You say, I don't think it makes sense, but I see that you have a problem because Diane wants this. So I'm going to prevent you having to go back to Diane saying, no, my team doesn't want to do this. I'm doing this for you. And that means next time, like there is something where I feel stronger than just about like doing NPS or not, right? Mm-hmm. I can pull something. And I think my example goes into that direction as well, where the example that I'm thinking of was a very classic one where we were working on YouTube ads, and there was a problem with like major advertisers pulling their budget. They stopped advertising with us because there had been an issue where their content had been shown against YouTube videos that weren't really savory. And so they decided that's a brand risk to them, and they stopped advertising. And so obviously that was bad for YouTube, right? And we tried to fix that super quickly by our engineering team developing a feature for them to have better control over what content, what YouTube videos they would show against with their ads. And they had basically hacked that together super quickly to be able to launch that within.
We were losing money, right? So
we were hemorrhaging money, right? Like nothing was coming in basically from our biggest advertisers. And so our PM had planned to launch this feature, I think the next day. And like we looked at it from the UX team side, and it was clear that this was not going to solve the problem of recreating trust, because it was so convoluted and so strange and hard to understand that the likelihood that the brands were going to damage themselves more by kind of like thinking they were doing something there that wasn't actually happening was really, really high. And so we didn't have time to really go through proper research with advertisers, those different types of profiles we had. We didn't have time to recruit for that and to run that with them. Because we had a good standing with our cross-functional teams, because we had created value for them before, we were able to negotiate for them to wait at least 48 hours before launching this, so we would have time to talk to internal people who were not representative of the external participants, but who were working in the same field. And so the trade-off that we made there was like, we're going to show this to people who are not representative, who have more knowledge, who are more likely to understand what we're trying to do there than the advertisers that we work with outside. And so there was a likelihood that they were going to understand something that wasn't going to be understood outside. But we got some data in, and fortunately or unfortunately, the solution was really so bad that not even the more knowledgeable, more trained people with internal knowledge were able to understand what they were doing, and we could tell a very clear story about the risk that we were running there and negotiate more time to refine the solution. Yeah. But that was also like, if we had insisted on kind of like getting the participants in, we wouldn't even have gotten those 48 hours delay.
Right? Exactly. It would have been launched and users would have been damaged. The business would have been damaged, right? And so and I think that is exactly the role of a researcher, right? Like you are part of that team and you need to understand all the factors that influence product development at that time and operate within those parameters. You don't get to float in a different dimension where time moves differently, right? And where you're like, well, this is how much time it takes, and you will have to adapt to my timeline, right? That is not realistic. That is not how product development works. And so part of the learning process of moving from academia to industry is exactly that. It's like figuring out which of your tool sets can you use how and at what moment and in what facet and in what manner for you to help the team ship better products.
And for you to show the team that this is your goal, right? For the team to understand that you are on their side, that you understand what's at stake for them as well. And I think that's oftentimes also something that we struggle with, or that researchers, UXers in general, struggle with. They're so focused on what's right for the user, they kind of devalue the business goals of our PMs, for example. And that's the first mistake, because if we don't take their goals and their needs and their risks seriously, why would they listen to us, right? Why would they give us any space? Why would they look at our data at all if they feel like we don't understand what's at stake?
And that's the thing with user-centered design, right? User-centered design is the three-legged stool, right? They call it, where you have PM, Eng, UX, right? It is the three disciplines working together and compromising. Right? At the end, I always say, if all three disciplines are not happy with the output, then it's likely that we have developed something reasonable, something that works from an engineering perspective, so technology, that creates business value for the business, and that is good for users, right? So sometimes UXers have this romantic view of like, if UX could decide everything, right? The entire product strategy, everything, then the product would be perfect. And nothing could be further away from the truth. And I can also prove it because I know UXers who have become PMs. Like we know, right? We know a bunch of UXers who have become PMs, and they were fantastic UXers and they're also fantastic PMs, but they are not launching products that are completely dictated by UX because they know this wouldn't work, right? And so understanding that and understanding which is you're a cogwheel in that, right? And how does that cogwheel have to work so at the end the output is better is important. If you look at this rigor versus speed question, right? It's not really versus, right? It is what time do you have to deliver insights to increase the chances of the coin flip being good, and operating with that with as much rigor as you can, naming the trade-offs that you have, right? And not feeling a bad researcher because of that, because you know what you would have done if you have all the time in the world, right? That reminds me, there is a question I like to ask people when I interview them for a UX research job. And the question creates a research scenario and tells them, what would you do? Like imagine you have no time constraints, no budget constraints, and no method constraints. So you can do whatever you want, whatever, how much it costs and how long it takes, you can do that, right? What would you do? So I tell them, this is a situation you will never face. right? And it's interesting how more experienced UX researchers who have been working in the industry for a while struggle with that question.
I'm like, what would I don't know.
Right? They go like, well, I would do a qualitative study. How many people? Well, maybe 8 or 10, right? I'm like, why not 500? Right? Like, and they're like, why would you? We don't need 500. Right? It's like, but I said you can do whatever you want, right? And so it's interesting to see that conflict, right? So as people move in the industry career, they move towards being much more pragmatic because they get more experience to understand how to be successful in that context.
And that's actually, I think people also strive with that very often. It's like you do need constraints in order to kind of like be able to be creative within that, right?
Actually,
if you don't have any constraints, it's boring. Like, what's the challenge?
Yeah. But I mean, even in academia, you have obviously a lot of constraints. They're just another size, right? You don't have that much budget. You don't have that many possibilities.
That wasn't your question.
But then maybe to round this topic up, I think beyond the question of rigor and speed, there is also the question, if you go back to, okay, how were you trained as an academic and what was your goal, right? Your goal was to publish that work and then to get cited. In industry, your goal is to create these insights that help the team take better decisions. And I want to stress here that if that doesn't happen, if the team doesn't take your advice to heart and doesn't take the research into account, then you're not successful as a researcher, right? So that's important. Basically, them using your research to do better things, take better decisions in the product is the equivalent of a citation of your paper when you publish it in academia. And so that's why I always tell researchers, your research is not done when your research is done, right? You said before, you're part of the team. You're at the table, right? So now you've done this research. And if you think you can just hand out that report, maybe give a quick presentation, half an hour, and like enjoy the glory of your results, move on and work on the next shiny thing, right? The team looks at that, forgets the next day, doesn't do anything with it. You're not successful because you had no impact, right? So staying close to the product development team in those meetings, ensuring follow-up actions, right? What are the follow-up? What do we need now? Do we need to do a sprint to figure out how to solve these issues, right? So maybe you help to organize that sprint, right? Do we need to open some bugs so engineers fix some of the stuff we found? Then maybe you do that and you follow up with them. And many follow-up actions. You need to be part of that until you are sure that something's happening with it.
And I think not just around the research, but also like the more senior you become, the more important it also becomes that you inform yourself about the decisions that they have to take, right? That you stay current with regards to like what their next steps and the steps after the next are going to be, so that you can already prepare thinking about like, what do we know about this? What do we not know about this? What should we know about this? Once that those discussions happen, once those decisions are being made, so that you're already in a position where you can create value by like just adding, like, we don't know this, right? This is an assumption, for example, and we should dig deeper into that.
Yeah. It was good. Well, it's only about half an hour. That's not that bad for us, right? Yeah. Let's call it a day here.
Let's call it a year.
Let's call it a year. Yes, that's right. So if you would like us to discuss any topics from UX, you can leave that in our Dory. The link is in the description. In the video description. We are not getting many questions, so that's why we took this question out of our coaching work that we see today. But there's always that open door. If we see interesting questions there, we will pick them up.
And of course, we're also interested to hear your thoughts on this topic. So
yes. Feel free to contact us, leave us comments on LinkedIn or in the YouTube video. We hope the audio quality is a lot better this time. We have actually invested in microphones, so hope you appreciate that. We used real money we had to work for. And happy holidays to everyone.
And a fantastic start into the new year.
Yes. This time of the year is really, I always enjoy it a lot because it's like nobody is really working. So if you have a job, make sure to not work over these days, just take off. If you're looking for a job, nothing will happen in this time. Maybe it's a good time to actually rest because looking for a job is really tiring. So, Yeah.
Be kind to yourself. Yes.
Yes. Well, happy holidays and see you next year. Bye-bye.
Bye.